Hello everybody, my name is KingStix, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to play Amumu effectively. A little disclaimer before we get started: Amumu is currently one of the weakest tank junglers you can play, and I wouldn't really recommend playing him past mid elo. If you're playing him in higher elo, diamond and up, enemy junglers will know how to abuse you and they'll try to fight you a lot early game, and if you die on Amumu in the early game, it takes you a long time to hit your level 6 power spike, and it's just really hard for you to get out any impact on your team. If you feel like the enemy team is going to invade you, or if your team isn't going to leash you, I recommend starting on wolves with your 𝐸 on Amumu. You can take it and have pretty much full health at the end of it without having to use your smite or using a refillable potion. Next, take your W at level 2 and move on to your raptors. If you try to do your Gromp, you'll take way too much damage, and we don't really need to take our blue yet since we have plenty of mana to blow through the rest of this clear. We will be taking a lot of damage from red buff, so I recommend using a refillable potion. Out of all the tank junglers, Amumu gets lower on health than the rest of them in the early game, so it's important you try to figure out where the enemy jungler is and avoid them in the early game, since Amumu can't really 1v1 anyone early on. My favorite part about this jungle path is it allows you to get your items early on, which will let you 1v1 the enemy jungler, or at the very least not die to them. Another thing I really like about it, it sets up a safe jungle pathing where it's going to be hard for the enemy jungler to clear you, since it is a highly unusual jungle pathing. And not only that, but after you clear your blue buff and Gromp, you can just do your wolves, raptors, and golems once again, and you'll be getting really close to your level 6. In this case, I see Teemo is pushing up really hard, so instead I run past my blue to gank him. As I'm running up, I'm keeping a close eye on him, and before I'm even in range of him to see me, he is clearly starting to run away. So at this point, I just back off, and now I can work on Scuttle Crab in my blue buff. When taking Scuttle Crab, stun it first before you smite it to do extra damage, and then use your E as well after you have it stunned. While taking Scuttle Crab, I see Teemo is pushing up once again, and it looks like Renekton is all-inning him. This is a perfect opportunity for me to follow up. Renekton went in a little bit early, but now that Teemo flashes down, I can flash then Q and finish Teemo off. Getting early gold is massive on Amumu since he doesn't have many escape options. He's really more of an all-in champion, and if you get the kill, you live, and if you don't, you pretty much die. In the early game, I don't recommend doing blue buff and Gromp at the same time on Amumu. He'll take way too much damage and it's not really worth it. The only time you really want to do this is if you don't plan on ganking and you're about to back soon, so you're only really concerned about the clear speed. In general, I wouldn't recommend taking Gromp on Amumu unless you do have the potions and smite for it. If you get too low in your jungle, it leaves you susceptible to dying to the enemy jungler, and it can also make it hard to set up ganks if you're low on HP. In this case, since I wasn't going to get 6 off of my clear anyway, and there weren't any obvious ganks, I just wanted to clear my jungle as fast as possible. I don't recommend going full tank Amumu because it leaves you too reliant on your team. What I recommend is going the runes I showed at the beginning of the video around the 8-second mark. The main thing is taking Aftershock as your keystone to give you lots of free tankiness, and it gives a considerable amount of damage as well. And the secondary thing I highly recommend is going Ultimate Hunter in your secondary tree. That way your ultimate is up a lot more in the mid and late game where you really need it on Amumu. That's the only way he can get very much impact at all in team fights compared to other tank champions. And by going Aftershock, this allows us to rush the AP jungle item, which will give us a lot of damage. And then for our secondary and third items, we can focus on AP and HP items combined. Things like Hextech Protobelt, 𝐈𝐊𝐿𝐎𝐻, and Liandry's are great options for Amumu. That's not to say that throwing in a true tank item like Frozen Heart or Thornmail doesn't have its situations, but in general, I recommend building AP and HP on Amumu rather than just going full tank. Once you do have your ultimate on Amumu, try not to AFK power farm your jungle. In this case, I can't gank top because Teemo is dead, so I'm idling in the middle of the map taking Scuttle Crab while I'm waiting to gank top lane or mid lane. When connecting with your Q on Amumu, sometimes you have to be patient and the enemies will just line it up for you. After you land your Q, immediately ultimate E and blue smite them. Luckily, 𝐒𝐂𝐈 has a lot of follow-up, so even though it was a turret dive and this is only gold elo, it was a fairly simple kill. Once again, when using your Q on Amumu, you want the enemy's path to be certain before you use it. That way you don't miss it because it is fairly thin. It's much easier to miss than a Nunu snowball or a Gragas belly flop. Jax is lined up against the walls to where he really has nowhere to juke to since the walls are in the way. It made an easy pick for me and my team. Q, E, and leave your W on. Amumu is a relatively slow champion and his ganks aren't very certain, so it's important that you try to farm as much as possible unless you are very certain that the gank will get a kill for you and your team. If you try to gank too much on Amumu and you're not really getting anything out of it, you'll fall really far behind, you won't be able to hit your level 6 power spike, and you won't be able to scale past Amumu's terribly weak early game. Another really bad thing about overganking early game on Amumu, other than the fact that you're most likely going to be putting off your level 6, is you're giving away your position to the enemy jungler. If you're playing against a Xin Zhao and you're doing these overextended bad ganks, it gives the enemy jungler opportunities to invade and take your jungle, or to just come kill you in your jungle since they now know where you are. So unless you're very certain that you're going to get a kill and you don't think you'll lose too much out of it in terms of your own jungle or giving away your position, just don't go for the gank early on Amumu. Other than Amumu's level 6 power spike with his ultimate, his second biggest power spike is when you complete your AP jungle item. Once again, Cinderhulk is an option, but I don't recommend it since you do miss out on so much damage. Like we discussed earlier, since my ultimate was coming up off a cooldown in a few seconds, instead of going directly to my jungle camps, I run past my jungle camps that have spawned in and then immediately look for a gank. We find Jax in the river, Victor as well. I use my ultimate and I follow up a 𝐂𝐈𝐊𝐿𝐴 for an easy double kill. Now that my ultimate is down, I can help push a wave or farm my camps like normal until my ultimate's near coming up, or unless there is a really easy gank. Here, if me and Renekton can kill Teemo, taking Rift Herald is a viable option, or me and a 𝐂𝐿AI could have gone for mid turret or the dragon. The dragon would have been slightly suboptimal though, since my bot lane had just backed and we would have been at risk of the enemy bot lane rotating in on us. Teemo thinks far too highly of himself, tries to fight Renekton while I'm nearby. Once again, I'm being patient with my Q until I know I can land it. After I get past the minions and slow him with my blue smite, I then Q him, E him, and it's a pretty simple kill. And now I can recall and get my tier 2 boots, which are going to be my Sork shoes. Once again, my ultimate is going to be off of cooldown by the time I leave base, so instead of going right back to my blue buff and my wolves and my Gromp, instead I'm going to look to try to get a kill bot lane, since those are the people who are alive in lane, and that's where I have my laners right now. You might be wondering, well, why not just go do your camps? Once again, my ult's about to be up, plus my golems and raptors are going to be spawning in soon anyway, so after this gank I have a really nice jungle pathing regardless, so I'm really not risking that much, and I'm easily optimizing my pathing and agency in this game. At this point, I really should have an Oracle lens. That was just really lazy of me. Luckily though, in low elo, they rarely ward the lane bushes, so I can just walk right up onto the Tristana, Q her, and ult her. I would have liked to have saved my ultimate, but it was very obvious that Jinx and Yuumi weren't really paying attention, because right when I stunned her, they didn't even react. So I knew if I didn't ult, Tristana was immediately going to jump away, and she probably would have lived. In this upcoming clip, I want to show you the potential power of Protobelt on Amumu Jungle. Here we catch Nautilus out of position and Tristana nearby. I Q onto him and I know I don't need to ult. Here, if I did have Protobelt though, I could have Protobelted right on top of the Tristana, blue smited her in ultimate to hold her in place, and then we most likely would have killed her. If your Q and flash are both down on Amumu, it can be very difficult to set up plays with your ultimate. That's one really nice thing about Protobelt, since it gives you a lot more options. And this right here is why I prefer AP Amumu. With Aftershock, you can actually one-shot people if they're low on health or very squishy. I put the Gromp in a really nice position. Triss basically greeted and I Q'd onto her. If I was pure tank Amumu though, she would have had time to jump away after my CC ended. In the mid late game on Amumu, you're constantly going to be looking for spots to Q over walls and catch the enemies by surprise. Since Amumu doesn't have any great gap closers, if your flash is down, you really don't want the enemies to know where you are, which is why I should really have an Oracle lens so I could clear vision and build pressure. In the mid and late game, it's important that you're not off on your own as Amumu, because if you get caught, you have no real escapes, and there's not many champions Amumu can really 1v1. They basically have to be super squishy or insanely far behind. Once you have your Protobelt, you can start setting up some spicy combos. Usually you're going to open up with your Q. Once you know you can land it, you're going to E, turn on your W, and then you're going to Protobelt them point blank range while they are still stunned. As you can see here, I just one-shot Tristana without ultimate just because how strong Protobelt is. And I do have some health items. I have Protobelt and I'm also partway built to my Riley's as well. In the late game as Amumu, don't stress out too much about landing an AoE ultimate as long as you can secure a kill for your team and not get yourself or anyone else on your team killed by doing it. It is totally worth it. Here I set up a kill on Victor and we end up killing Nautilus as well. Even if we only got the Victor though, it would have totally been worth it, since a kill in the mid and late game lets you get lots of objectives for free. Once you have your Proto Belt and then you get your Riley, something I really like about these items is they synergize so well together. You can completely AoE the whole enemy team from range and slow them just with your Proto Belt because of the Riley is slow. After that pick, we got a free mid turret and free mid inhibitor. Right now my ultimate is up, so I am very dangerous. I'm going to Proto Belt into the Tristana and then ultimate her. She didn't really have time to react, so I finish her off with my E and Smite, and then me and Yuumi can start to make our way out. Teemo is chasing, he's in hot pursuit. I thought I had enough damage to pretty much one-shot him, so I Q onto him with my W on, E him, and then unfortunately I do get ignited and I die before we can kill the Teemo. If we could have just killed him a tiny bit faster, me and Yuumi would have easily been able to mop up the Nautilus and I would have lived. Shortly after that fight, the enemy team did surrender and the damage chart showed I did the most damage on either team as Aftershock AP Amumu with some health items. If you guys forgot the runes in item build, go back to the first 8 seconds of the video and you should be able to find it there. I hope this Amumu Jungle guide helped you out, and if it did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps out the channel a lot with the YouTube algorithm. My name is KingStix, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.